just don't at all think that he was coercing anyone or forcing them. I think he really sounded like he was a gentleman. I believe those women. Like I've said before, I don't think they have been green. And what I can do is just drag and drop this. All these details from this man's face, alleged to be Joseph Smith, onto Joseph Smith Jr.'s death mask. That you can just find this on the internet. And so in the last video I just kind of left it here, but this time I can just do this, bring it back and forth. I can select it again. How does it do that? Oh, I need to select it. I can drag and drop that and put it back. Attached. Okay, I was trying to say it's not attached. I don't know. It's funny. But his big thing is like his ears just kind of stuck out. No. Here's Lucy's ears. They stick out, okay? Catherine's ears, his older sister. Lucy was his younger sister. This is his older sister. The ears are exactly like his. And this is a painting of Joseph Smith Sr.
Okay, so today I am going to talk about Mark Hoffman, his forgeries, and how that related with the reorganized Church of Christ of Latter-day Saints and the Utah-based Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and everything that went down. My perspective as an active member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I was very young at the time. I was about 1 year old when this all started. I was about 3 years old when all the horrible things happened. So, and we were in Oregon, grew up in Oregon. Anyway, so I heard a little bit about this, more than I saw in the news. I remember hearing a little bit in seminary and just a little bit when Hinckley was interviewed in 1998. But I'm just going to tell a little bit about it. Of course, you can watch the many documentaries that are out there, and I've watched a couple of them. So it was about 1981 that Mark Hoffman, he forged first a prayer that was supposedly from Joseph Smith Jr. It was Thomas Bullock. They claimed it was his handwriting. So somehow, yeah, Hoffman was really good at what he did, because these experts knew, Bullock's handwriting. And he just started finding stuff and things. He tried to make it all super organic and natural, like, oh, I just found this. So this was the first thing. It was a big deal in 1981. And so allegedly it was a January 1844 writing saying that 11-year-old Joseph Smith III would be the successor. So it was a huge controversy. Everything he found was very controversial. And so we do find that he really didn't believe in the church at all, and he was trying to upset people. He was trying to cause division and contention. He was trying to disprove the church. It really was his intent. And I didn't read his whole, I know I've seen them talk about his biography or whatever, but I won't go into everything about that. But as far as this specific prayer blessing, his son did deny, and I've read the memoirs, he doesn't believe that he was ordained at that point to become a prophet or anything. But anyway, but in the past I did research and found a video by Gordon B. Hinckley, who was not yet the prophet at the time when all this happened. So those of you that are really young don't know timelines that well. But he was saying how he did not know if the documents were real or forgeries. He didn't look convinced to me when I found him being interviewed, but they had to kind of give in because all these experts said it was real because it was that well done. But it was the early 1980s, and so they did admit that we were victims, But the Church of Christ of Latter-day Saints, they bought the prayer, but they didn't know that the Communion of Christ was really important to the Communion of Christ, which was still called the Reorganized Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, which is confusing because they changed their name 20 years ago to the Community of Christ. But they were planning to sell the Book of Commandments. They wanted to get something so they'd have enough money to get this, and they were talking to Hoffman, and okay, Hoffman, come here. Hoffman's in Utah, come to Missouri, and leave it with us, and we'll have experts look at it. And then Hoffman just sold it to the Utah-based Church of Christ of Latter-day Saints, And so I was listening to this story by this guy that was the archivist with them, and he sort of complained and talked to the main Church of Christ Latter-day Saints, and they had really good relations at that point. And the church was just going to donate it to them. And he was just like, oh, no, like we have the Book of Commandments. We can just give this to you. So it ended up being interesting that the Church of Christ Latter-day Saints did get something in return from the community of reorganized church, the RLDS church at the time. They don't call themselves that anymore, but people that you do need to know, I mean, it's just true, people that have left the community of Christ still call themselves RLDS. I've heard that. But so Hoffman, they were going to meet. He just suddenly gave it to the church. So it was Richard Howard that I heard an interview with. It was interesting. And so the leaders were really nice. They did the trade. They gave him the Book of Commandments. He thought Hoffman didn't want to talk to Hoffman at all. At that point, it was like, he doesn't have good business practices. This guy's a jerk. So, but yeah, they just did a trade. We'll give you the Book of Commandments, and you can give us this blessing. And so the Reorganized Church still has it. According to him, it's still in their archives, this Mark Hoffman forgery that the Reorganized Church didn't have to pay anything for. But, the Church of Christ Latter-day Saints did end up getting the Book of Commandments. Anyway, by 1985, so it's from 1981, it started 1985, Steve Christensen pays Hoffman, because at this point he's just found so much stuff, it's insane. Pays him $40,000 for what is known as the Salamander Letter, and he donated it to the church. And so a lot of transactions are done this way, like wealthy members will buy things that are of significance to the church history, whatever, and they'll just donate it to the church because they have enough money, they have enough stuff, and they just have a good heart, they're a good person. And so Steve Christensen was. But he became leery of Mark Hoffman. And so this point, in 1985, the Church of Christ Latter-day Saints had spent roughly themselves $57,100 on 7 documents Hoffman just found. Randomly, you just find it in things. It's just, obviously that became suspicious after a while. So 41 documents were donated or traded. And so Mark Hoffman, because Steve Christensen was really, he knew he was onto him. And he was really finding things that were about to disprove stuff. So I don't know the exact details. I'd have to watch the documentary again, but I think they were getting better experts, basically. And so Mark Hoffman, he was either, I guess in his testimony, he was like, I'm either going to kill myself or I'll just kill a bunch of people. So he took his anger out on Steve Christensen, and he thought his boss, but it ended up, so Steve Christensen found a homemade bomb. Like it was an explosive bomb, and it killed him instantly. And then the wife of his coworker, Kathy Sheets, a package was sent to their home. She picked it up, it killed her. Soon after that, Hoffman's car was blown up with him in it. And he survived. He was hardly injured, barely injured, in an enclosed space of his car. And it's kind of sad. It's very ironic. Like, you hear of drunk drivers severely injuring, maiming, killing families, wives, mothers, fathers, grandfathers, just the good person dies, and the drunk that made a stupid decision, because I do know some of them aren't 100% evil or bad, but they did a bad thing. They live. I just always hear, and it's like they walked away. It's like, how does that happen? So it was like that. He was just fine. But anyway, massive evidence was, of course, he was taken to the hospital, but they were like, okay, we're going to check his house, his basement. And so in his basement, where his wife couldn't go, nobody could go, they found a ton of evidence. And so they easily convicted him of the murders and forgery. And for some reason, he didn't get the death penalty. I don't know why. I'd have to re-research that again. But, it's just interesting to I'm not a psychiatrist, psychologist, I can't diagnose him. But you can go to www.minddiagnostics.org. It's a little bit longer, but I'll just give a link to it. But so they're just like, what are considered sociopathic traits? And so here are some potential signs and traits of a person with antisocial personality disorder. This doesn't 100% mean these people are going to do what Mark Hoffman did. But they often have a lack of empathy for others. And this is often, did I say this? Oh yeah, it's usually termed antisocial personality disorder. And they're usually diagnosed after they're arrested and they go to jail, and it's a very high percentage, I'll tell you in a second. But a lack of empathy for others, obviously, that one's kind of known. But little to no genuine remorse, the manipulation of other people, lying and deceit, a sense of superiority over others, little to no regard for right or wrong, the belief that rules do not apply to them, getting into legal trouble, or little regard for the law, a lack of responsibility or engaging in irresponsible behaviors, aggression or hostility, exploitation of other people, and substance use, very common. So again, it's minddiagnostics.org, and they also state, that people with antisocial personality disorder are not monsters, and despite the name of this disorder, it doesn't mean that someone is antisocial in the way we typically understand the term. For a person to be diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder, they must meet the DSM criteria for the disorder, and it's also called ASPD. But you just never know. That's sort of a precursor. It would make somebody susceptible to doing really, really bad things. And it could be just, drugs making it worse, or apparently in the documentary, it was Murder Among the Mormons. I guess Mark Hoffman weird detail that they told he would often fly and go to New York and still claiming to be Mormon to the public, but he would get really, really drunk, and he would drink more than people that weren't Mormon, and he would just act normal. So there was something wrong with him. Obviously, and it's very sad, and it's still very raw in the 1980s, early 1980s. The battery dies really quick on my camera, but I definitely have seen President Nelson, and I think he knew things that were going to happen with the lockdown and with COVID, and warning us and telling people, get your seatbelts on, it's going to be crazy, and take your vitamins right before COVID happened. And it turned out, vitamins did have a big effect, and a lot of other things, but I'm not going to go all that. But we just have to, realize you can receive revelation for yourself, and then just imagine it's the same thing with the prophet. They just have authority to receive revelation the same way you do for everyone, but it's not all the time. It'd be nice if it was for us, for them, if we could constantly ask for help. But I think we get a lot more help than we know, and the prophets have helped us so much. And it was interesting to find there was some good that came out of something really awful in the 80s. But that's just all I have for you today, because my camera is just not going to let me continue on, which is fine. I just would rather use my other camera today. But anyway, have a good day.